Brother Jabari's top student, Tahuti Heru. Yeah, what's going on, party people in the place to be? I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? Happy Friday. Happy Veterans Day. Thank you for all the soldiers who have and are currently serving. Thank you for your service. Regardless of whatever political spectrum you fall on, we all can support our troops. So thank you for your service. And happy Friday to everybody. I want to say what's up to my man CMB, the ambassador, on the check in. What's going on, sir? And if you have not yet already, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend that's him again. I know we're coming in a little early. Some of us are off today, and yeah, so please spread the word. Of course, if you like how it goes down with the BK, you can show your love via PayPal. Or if you'd like to be a monthly supporter of BK, you can become a Patreon where you get an assortment of goodies to help you in your personal Bible study. And I am lucky enough to be here with some amazing apologists. Of course, no, sir. No, sir. We're going to start with you. Just for that, we're going to start with you, Mr. Phil Fox. What's going on, sir?
What up, fam? Good to be here. It's always good to hang out with my bros, my family, in these UA streets, enacting some violence upon certain individuals, some maybe to be mentioned on this live stream. But I'm just here filling my punch card, my quota, because if I
That's
don't
right.
have a certain number of hours, I get my bodega card taken away. So I'm just here for.
Ah, man, we're so happy to have you. And of course, we have apologist in Detroit, Kang the Conqueror himself. What's going on, man?
I almost called you last week because I was I think I mentioned this before. Carm, who's a moderator, and so anyway, I help her mom with some stuff, and by her mom is a bodega, like a store that
Uh,
the store is called bodega, right? So Spanish, which means there's Spanish people that own it, and unfortunately for me, who doesn't speak very much Spanish, most people, everybody here speaks Spanish. So I walk into this store and I walk to the back of it where they have the delightful smelling food. And I want to. Only thing I know for sure is mofongo. That's the one
right.
thing I know, right? Everything else, I have no clue what all of this is, but everything smells awesome. But I speak zero Spanish, and I'm trying to figure out a way to order some food.
uh,
And I'm like, who can I call that speaks Spanish that'll help me order some food? And I end up abandoning the mission after about ten
Aw,
minutes of struggling with the language barrier. It was awesome though. And so I was like, next time I come here, we'll bring BK here to the bodega, and we can chat it up a little bit with the locals.
that's what's up. That's what's up. So we are here today to address a particular video of an individual that I wasn't aware of. Actually, come to find out, vocab actually is familiar with this individual because I think he's definitely a member, but he might be the lead member of the Shrine of Ma'at in Arizona. And of course, when we speak about the Shrine of Ma'at, of course, we're talking about our good friend, brother Jabari Osase, right? And so I recently saw him on Sonetta, and he did a presentation. Now we're not gonna do a commentary on the whole video. The video was like 8 hours, so there's no way we're gonna comment about everything. And we're gonna look at his presentation, but only like really just two portions, because the majority of the stuff that he said, uh, I've covered multiple times on many videos. So we're just gonna focus on a couple of things here. So, did you guys see the video yet from Mr. Tahuti Heru? Have any of you seen this video yet?
I've seen about 30 seconds of the 8 hours.
Wow. How about you, Phil?
I seen bits and pieces of it. Yeah, after you shared it with us.
All right. So any
I
initial
saw more than 30 seconds. I was being silly,
right.
but I didn't see. I don't think I seen a full hour of it. I saw bits and pieces. I kind of jumped around a little bit because as
Right. No,
you kind of
I too have
pretty
not
long.
seen the whole thing. I just looked at the presentation. There's no way I'm gonna look at 8 hours. But
You know,
any initial thoughts before we get in, Phil, or apologies to the
I,
crew?
you know, I mean, just like you said, you know, you've already covered a lot of this stuff, and there's a reason behind that because there was a lot of regurgitation happening from stuff that we've seen from Jabari, and you know, just the common rhetoric that's in, you know, the whole conscious community aspect of this particular, you know, subject. So yeah, so it was just a lot of the same, you know, trying to revive some zombie memes,
Right.
and trying to, you know, revive some old talking points that have been around for a long time. So um yeah, it just felt like it was just deja vu, you know what I mean? A
Right.
bad version of deja vu.
Right.
Sometimes I need a break from reality, and I say, should I take some mushrooms or should I watch Sinetta? And I usually choose Sinetta because
Uh
it's a lot more healthier and legal. So I just go with some
that's
Sinetta.
terrible. So what well speaking of Sonetta, we're gonna allow him to speak about Tahuti. So we get a little flavor for who they deem him to be in the community. All right. So with that, you can start playing it, Chris.
Are we up? All right, there we go. There we go.
Shout out to this brother through the video yesterday, the day before yesterday. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Brother go by the name of Tahuti Forever. Okay? Tahuti Forever. And I want to bring this brother to you. I think that he's going to be a real good fit for the HOK. This brother is a student of Brother Jabari. We'll get more into it. He's coming with great, powerful information and research. I don't have the brother bio in front of me, but one day we'll get it and we'll go all the way in and make no mistake about it, man. Y'all gonna love and appreciate this gem that we have in front of us. Okay, and so without any further ado,
You can stop
I
there.
bring to you.
So he's a student of Jabari, right? And actually, there's another video where he says that he's the top student of Jabari, right? He's gonna bring great research and information, and he is a gem to that community. All right. So keep that in mind as we see a couple of portions of his presentation. He's a gem,
Can we fix your basement?
great research and information. This is
With our
what this
new basement
individual
waterproofing?
possesses. So with that, we're gonna go to the 17-minute mark and let's see what great information this man has to share. All right, here we go.
Unmuted, Chris.
So this slide is discussing the difference between religion and the African spiritual system, the ancient African spiritual system. Um,
There's an echo there, bro. Is there any way you can get rid of
so
the
as,
echo?
as far as religion,
Chris,
religion
you're
is
turning your
really going to
volume
focus
down on your laptop.
And can you restart it on a
on
17-minute mark?
a god or gods.
Okay. Can you hear the volume without the laptop
Gods
volume?
are always
Can y'all hear
Yes.
that?
Yes, yes.
gods.
Okay, cool.
All right. Thank you everybody for coming in. Please share the video. Let's get the
So
chat
this
popping.
slide is discussing the difference between religion and the African spiritual system, the ancient African spiritual system. Um, so as far as religion, religion is really going to focus on a god or gods. Gods are always deities, gods such as El, Zeus, Jesus, Rapis, or Odin. There's thousands and thousands of gods that we've created over time. However, in ancient times, African spiritual system, there was no such thing. God is a more recent development of the concept of deity or divinity.
In ancient times, we conceptualized divinities as states or statuses. Now, these can be energetic, mental, emotional, or states of nature, which are all aspects of divinity. So, when we're talking about statuses and states, or these are principles, right? These are something that's within us, within an individual, within nature, within a community. I wanted to bring up in this slide one of the oldest gods, the old Canaanite god, which is the god El, just so we can understand how these concepts propagated and went through from the African spiritual system all the way through to religion, to Christianity, to Islam. Um, Africa influenced all of the modern day systems. So on this side, you'll see a star.
You breaking up, brother. You're breaking up.
This
You're
is a
breaking
song
up.
now principles that they represent. So completion, righteousness, that's what Asar represents. And the Canaanites came and they used Asar to create their deity. Now, a deity is different than a principle. A deity is an outside being, spiritual or physical. They created El. So El is a recreation of Asar. That's why they look similar here. Now, the word El became an epithet. An epithet is a word that, a name that becomes a principle or an idea. So the name El became a principle, and that principle became divinity. So anything that people thought was divine became El. So this is how we get Elohim, El Shaddai, Adom,
Brother, you breaking up.
Alemai,
Breaking up.
the word God,
You
the
breaking
name of
up.
God that we call. Well, that's not good. How am I doing now?
It sound all right now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I
Okay.
hear you good.
So I was just fantastic. I'm just mentioning that El becomes part of the Christian religion. So in reality, if you're worshiping El Shaddai, Elohim, you're actually unofficially worshiping Asar.
All
For
right, you can
anyone
stop
with
there.
vision.
All right. So before we get into the slides, what are your thoughts, guys, about what he's saying here? Chris?
Um, actually, I couldn't hear because of the way that the audio works. So I
Okay.
don't know exactly what he was saying in that
Okay.
moment, but I can tell by the slides that it was some nonsense. But because I didn't actually hear what he said, I can't speak to anything specifically. He said, but
Well, I mean,
seeing white Jesus up there, and all the all the typical iconography of ignorance
right.
was kind of telling.
So at one point he says that we all get our understanding of religion from Kemet, right? But then he says that Kemet didn't believe in actual gods, but principles. But the
Hmm.
Canaanites believe in gods. So if we believe in gods and Kemet didn't believe in gods, then how do we get that from Kemet? If you guys
Right.
already believe in principles, right? So I thought that was very interesting. So
Kind of
anyway,
kind of self-defeating.
right. But so and I've covered this before, but where do the ancient people of Kemet really believe that these beings weren't beings at all, but symbols? Who's the person that really taught this kind of stuff? Well, we're going to look at that. So, in this paper by Scott Moncrief from the Journal of Hellenic Studies, volume 29, Phil, would you be so kind as to read this for us?
Again, with Plutarch, as with all foreigners, the animal gods of Egypt were a sore stumbling block, and he is fain to pass them off as mere symbols or as Altarian interpretations.
Quotations.
As a matter of fact, the Egyptians worshiped their animal deities without assigning any fanciful reason for doing so, as they had always worshipped them from the time that they were in the local gnome totems in the pre-dynastic period.
Right. It was Plutarch, right, and other foreigners who had issue with these actual deities. They thought it was beneath their high-minded Neoplatonic belief systems, right? So it's like surely they wasn't really worshiping actual deities that looked like this. They had to be symbols, right? But the matter of the fact was they've always worshipped these deities. Like they actually worship them as deities. I read this. The Hide that Osiris, it's talking about Osiris and Isis, written late in Plutarch's life, offers some of the most sophisticated formulations of Middle Platonic metaphysics that have come down to us. As scholars have long been aware, this is a deeply and explicitly philosophical text. Classicists have generally maintained that in the Dahide, Plutarch merely uses the Egyptian material as a vehicle through which to express Middle Platonic conceptions about the structure and genesis of the cosmos. It is thus seen as incidental to the primary philosophical aim of the text and exegesis of Plato's Timaeus. So when he speaks about Egypt, he don't really care too much about Egypt. He's just using it as a centrifuge to showcase his philosophy because in the Greco-Roman world, the more something is ancient, the better it is. So what he's trying to do is basically retrofit his Platonism back into Kemet to give his philosophy credence. So he doesn't care about Kemet like that at all.
Just a springboard.
That's it. All right. Now he also mentioned Mr. Tahuti that L comes from right Osiris, right? So according to Following Osiris Perspectives on Osirian Afterlife for 4 millennia by Mark Smith, page 161, it says, no ancient Egyptian sources record how or in what circumstances belief in Osiris arose. This silence has left considerable scope for speculation about his origins, an opportunity which modern scholars have not been slow to exploit. Various theories have been proposed, according to which Osiris was originally a god of agriculture, vegetation, or fertility, a chthonic deity, a panther goddess, a jackal god, a personification of the deceased on the embalming bed, a deified human ruler, or an amalgam of all deceased kings, a generic royal ancestor. His cult, according to these theories, emanated from the eastern delta, Upper Egypt, or from abroad, whether the Levant, Libya, or even Babylonia. So the academic consensus is we don't know where Osiris is from. We don't know the origin. So for him to say that the Canaanites got it from Egypt, well, academia says we don't know where this dude came from. So he could be from the Levant. He could be Libya. He could be from Babylon. This is what the academics are saying. So for him to say this, it's like it's just it's you are going against the academic consensus here. So for you to be like it's a direct correlation, there is none. There is none. And before we continue, special shout out to my man just came in the building, MJ Jackson. What's going on, sir?
Hat tip to you all. God bless y'all. It's 12:30 where I'm at, so I'm not used to coming in this early, but I'm happy to be kicking it with y'all. But something that was mentioned earlier, I was listening backstage,
Mm-hmm.
and he talked about how deity is represented like classes and things like that. He made that point.
States, right? States.
States. Here's the thing, and what makes the God of the Bible, the God of the Old Testament and the New Testament unique, is that while all the other cultures around the Near Eastern, in the Near East, Africa, because I'm pretty sure they're going to have a problem with me even saying the Near East.
Right.
Uh, Most of those gods were associated with kings and um, high class people with a lot of status and things like that. But the Bible explicitly goes out of its way to say that God chose the lowborn to be rich in faith, uh, that he who um, gives to the poor lends to the Lord. Um, what you do to the least of
That
these,
he picked the nobody people. You
that,
weren't
that
the
he
greatest of people around. You were a nobody, and I chose you over everyone else. You know, making that same point.
so even my whole point is this: even if the trend is that yeah, all these religions have this associated where, uh, these religions are associated with high status, high states, or high classes of people. Here you have this quote unquote religion emerging in the middle of cultures surrounding it that's radically different from it. And so even if he's trying to make that argument, it'll ultimately testify to the uniqueness of the God of the Bible. That's my
Yeah,
2 cents.
I would if I'm allowed to interject here also,
Sure.
that we know that in the ancient Near East, that gods were gods were um, described by their function. You read John Walton, he kind of draws
Hmm.
that out, teases that out when you're looking at even the Genesis 1 narrative, that
Hmm.
basically every element of nature that is mentioned in Genesis chapter 1 is an Egyptian god. The sky, the moon, the stars, everything. It's an Egyptian god. So I get what he's saying to one degree. The problem is that they weren't simply principles or elements. They were personified, they were anthropomorphized, and they were made into the lords of our lives. They were the stories, the accounts of them tell us how they prescribed how we should live, and how when we didn't live up to their expectations, there were consequences for that. So his notion that these are simply principles doesn't fly in light of the actual history that we have and that we've uncovered. The history that we've uncovered makes it very clear that they're more than simply principles. They are in fact deities. They're in fact
Right.
gods, and they are in are so in a way where they use humanistic anthropomorphic ways of describing their character and the way that they think and that they behave and how they interact with us. So
Right.
yeah, it just doesn't stand up to scholarship and what we actually know about them.
Absolutely. And the ironic thing is the person who discards that and does say that no, they are actually just mere symbols is the white man, Plutarch, who fancied himself a Kemetic priest, couldn't read the Metal Netter, had a limited understanding of Egypt, and basically freestyled what he didn't know and just to fill in the gaps. This is where we get the idea that the gods were principles. It wasn't from the actual people of Kemet. They worship actual deities. That's why they made temples and they offered sacrifices. Why offer a sacrifice to a principle? Why did you mummify cats? For principles? No, no, not at all. So, all right, cool. So now he goes on and he goes on to talk about L and how L is, Asar, and he's not because no one knows if he comes from Kemet or not. But then he goes on and basically says that this is basically every time you see El used as a root word for El Shaddai or Elohim, we're really talking about, you know, uh, Osiris, right? Here's the problem with that, right? In biblical studies, a root word fallacy is a mistaken belief that a word inherently carries one meaning in all of its uses. It unfortunately happens frequently. For example, a preacher is preaching away and then gets into an important word in the text and says, quote, Now, this word comes from the Greek root word, which always means fill in the blank. And so we can import that root meaning here. So I'm not just getting on him. Even Christian preachers do the same mistake. Okay. You should not trace everything back to a supposed root meaning. The meaning of words is located in the present cultural context. And the question to ask is, what did the author mean by using this word in the textual context of his culture and time? Many times, what the author means is different than the root meaning of the word. For some reason, Jabari's top scholar, this gem in the community, seems to have not understand this for some strange reason, right? So, and he brings up Elohim, right? So, if God's called Elohim, Yahweh is really Asar. And I don't think Tahuti understands how the word Elohim is used. So, quoting, one of my favorites, Heiser, several different entities are referred to as Elohim in the Old Testament. Considering this variety provides insight as to how the term should be understood. The Hebrew text of the Old Testament refers to the following as Elohim: Yahweh, the God of Israel, over 1,000 times, the members of Yahweh's heavenly council, the gods of foreign nations, demons, spirits of the human dead, and angels. Right? All things called Elohim in the Hebrew Bible have one thing in common: they all inhabit the non-human realm. That is, they are by nature not part of the world of humankind, a world of ordinary embodiment. Elohim, as a term, describes residence. It identifies the proper domain of the entity described by it. Yahweh, the lesser gods, angels, demons, and the disembodied dead are all rightful inhabitants of the spiritual world. It is not a personal name. The top scholar here, Tahuti, seems to think that Elohim is a personal name for Yahweh. Like, no, it's a designation. Not to be clear, Yahweh is an Elohim, but no Elohim is like Yahweh. Just so people don't think that I'm putting Yahweh in the same, you know, equal status with these other beings. But that's what the term is. The term describes residence. But the top scholar should have known this. Should he not? So before I continue, you guys want to add anything here?
It's like that moment in Coming to America where he's telling the story about the soup, and the waitress say, "Well, taste the soup," and there's no spoon. He's like, "Aha!" That anyway, words are equivocal and not univocal. The context determines the meaning of the word. Go figure.
That's
Works
that's
that
how
works that works that way today still too.
it's a nice little term we know as reading comprehension, right? So if you want to properly understand what a word means, the sentence defines how that word is being used. Not to sound like a jerk, but I mean that's grade school stuff. It really is. You know, Mr. Jackson, any words from you, sir?
Now we can keep moving.
Cool. All right, so let's get to the next clip. Phil. Peace to Phil. He was here. Chris, you ready? All right, cool. This gets real interesting, guys. Watch this.
Movies. The word Sith, the word Sith is nothing more than Seth. This is where the concept of the Sith Lord comes from. And I'll go ahead and make this point so you don't think I'm just making it up. In the Star Wars movies, the hero name was Luke Skywalker. George Lucas is the person who invented Star Wars. He created the concepts in Star Wars, and he studied Kemet, or ancient Egypt. So he studied these principles and created his ideas of his movie based on these principles. Luke Skywalker is George Lucas. Lucas is where the name Luke comes from. And there's layers to it. Like they say, Luke also means light. Either way, Luke is going to be in reference to the creator, which is George Lucas, or light. Now, today, the newer movies, we have a new hero, and her name is Rey, as in Sun Ray. So we're still talking about darkness versus light. Now, the name Skywalker, we're talking about the sun, how it walks across. If you watch the arrow, walks across the sky. This is what George Lucas was referring to when he named his hero Skywalker. He's referring to the sun walking across the sky. So that's where you get Luke Skywalker. Now, there's 4 movies where Ray is now the hero, and at the end of the last movie, you'll see Luke Skywalker. He evaporates, he dies into the sunlight. So he basically becomes the sun. And the very final few seconds of that movie, they ask Ray, what is her last name? Ray decides to adopt the name Skywalker. So it becomes a full circle in the movie. So the whole concept of the Force, all these informations comes from Kemet. Chewbacca is actually one of our ancestors. He's one of the pharaohs of Kemet. His name is Chewbacca. We have the Chewbacca stone. We understand that he's using these names and he's telling the story based on our ancestral mythology. So that's
All right, you
Ray
stop there.
Skywalker, full circle.
All right, so let's hear your thoughts on that particular segment there. His correlation with Star Wars and Ancient Kemet. MJ?
In the words of the Orthodox Moor, whose man's is this? Anyway, that sounds really, 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 really performative. Like, almost like we've heard this song and dance
So crazy.
before, where where we take movies and play with them and attach meanings to the characters. I think Browder wrote a whole book. Uh, what was the movie about? Avatar. Browder wrote a whole book trying to tie Avatar back to Kemet, and it was just bizarre. It was just bizarre. And so, when we talk about knowledge, we're talking about epistemology. We're talking about, okay, how do you know this? What's your justification for saying what you're saying, for making these claims to knowledge? And so, one of the easiest things to do would be to have statements or some type of evidence coming from George Lucas himself that this is what he was doing or whatnot. But it just really seems bizarre to say Sith means Seth. Both of those are English words. So already right then and there, we have a defeater for the blatant assertion. The blatant assertion using the phonetic fallacy that if two things sounded like, they must come from one another. And I think this dude's teacher would want him to use the Kemetic name underlying Seth rather than the English Tomhu name. And so when we use the Kemetic name, that this performative semblance, and I'm gonna keep saying performative because it's not intellectual. It's not based on evidence. It's performative. This is a gimmick, and it needs to be called out. But when we use the Kemetic name that's underlying it, this semblance disappears. So this is, I'm praying for my people. I'm gonna just leave it at that. Uh-oh.
I'm sure he'll be back in a second. He must have
Okay.
probably hit the wrong button. Man, that was like, okay, again, like I can't hear what's going on because what the it is, because just that's how StreamYard works. It's playing, but I have to have my laptop volume down so it doesn't echo. And so I couldn't hear anything he said, but I was dying laughing looking at the slides of all the Matrix and Star Wars and the sky and Skywalker. And I'm just like, I mean, like, do you hear yourself, man? Do you? Hilarious.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, if we follow his line of reasoning, Michael Jackson's moonwalk probably ties back to Kemet somehow, some way.
So listen, man. And again, not to sound like a jerk, but this sounds a lot like the old school black conscious rhetoric, like, you know, the library. That's where they bury the lies. You know, television, telling lies to your vision. It's like he's using that same kind of rhetoric, and it's not good, especially when you're considered a gem of the conscious community, right? And something that I just thought of just now when he said that I didn't even have in my slides, because he said when Ray adopted the moniker of Skywalker, it it everything ended up full circle. No, it did not. The last trilogy actually broke the circle. What do I mean by that? If you understand the Skywalker saga, what you know is that there was a prophecy that one would come to bring balance to the Force. That was Anakin. Okay, Anakin turns to the dark side. So now it's like, okay, we have a problem. In fact, Obi-Wan, right, when he basically defeated Anakin, he's like, he screamed, but you was the chosen one. You was the one to bring balance, right? Now, of course, his son comes, Luke, and helps to redeem his father at the last moment, and he comes back to the light, and he throws Palpatine down that chute where he explodes and dies. So the prophecy is fulfilled. Anakin actually did bring back to the Force. By Disney bringing back Palpatine, broke the circle of the story. So no, it wasn't full circle. If you understand the actual Skywalker saga, you would know that them creating the character named Rey actually broke a complete circle of the story. So right there and then you're just completely off, right? But now let's get into these other things here. Let me. All right, so he made mention of the Sith coming from Seth, right? So let's look at that for a minute. Actually, Chris, could you read us?
Lucas took many of his inspirations for names from other languages of the world, mixing and matching sounds and vowels and inventing his own to create a uniquely alien language that also seemed bizarrely plausible. Tune, for instance, is town in Japanese, and Lucas evidently is found of its phonetic sound since he devised both Tatooine and Tawun we from it. Jedi is, of course, derived from Jediya Giki, a Japanese term meaning period form, and used, among other things, to describe some of the samurai films in which Lucas was inspired by. Sith is a word Edgar Rice Burroughs invented.
Right, and this is from The Secret History of Star Wars, The Art of Storytelling, and the Making of a Modern Epic, third edition by Michael Kaminsky, page 474. So here we see how Lucas, came to having all these different names. He got it from different languages, and basically because of its phonetic sounds, he chose these certain words. Now, Sith is a word that Edgar Rice Burroughs invented. Now, where does Rice Burroughs invent this name? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's from a book that he wrote called The Warlord of Mars. Now, in the book, the hero here fights the Sith, and the book describes the Sith. So let's see how this Sith is described. MJ, if you could read this, sir.
Says imagine if you can a bald faced hornet of your earthly experience grow to the size of a prize Hereford bull. Excuse me. Mm. And you will have some faint conception of the ferocious appearance and an awesome formidability of the winged monster that bore down upon me. frightful jaws in front, and mighty, poison sting behind made my relatively puny longsword seem a pitiful weapon of defense indeed. Nor could I hope to escape the lightning like movements or hide from those myriad facet eyes which covered three-fourths of the hideous head, uh, permitting the creature to see in all directions at one and the same time.
So this Sith has the face of a head of a bald-faced hornet.
Mm.
It has wings. It has a poison sting and myriad faceted eyes, which covered three-fourths of the hideous head. Right? To continue, I stumbled to my feet and staggered back to Wooler's assistance to find his savage antagonist circling 10 feet above the ground, beating madly at the cleaning Elot with all six powerful legs. So it has six powerful legs, right? So here's a depiction of Carter, the hero, with his sidekick Wooler fighting the Sith, which you see on your left hand side. Now, here's the Sith, here's Seth. So
Tastes just like chicken.
spitting image, correct?
Right.
Oh yeah, it looks the same to me, man.
Look more like General Grievous to me, but maybe that's just me, you know.
I mean, it's so, but but let's look a little deeper, right? Does the now we know that this is how this particular author uses this word, this term, Sith. But does the word Sith have an etymology? It actually does. So let's look at the etymology of the Sith. Let's not just go by the depiction of this sci-fi book or this drawing. Let's look at the etymology, right? So, Sith. This is from the online etymology dictionary. A once common, now obsolete word for sense. Middle English, right? Sitten, sith, reduced from Old English. Then, thereupon, continuously, during which, seeing that, a comparative adverb, subsequent to that, from, after, from the Proto Germanic, later, after, source also of Old Saxon sith, after that, since, later, German, Gothic, late, long, late. Nothing here about a Kemetic deity.
Look like everybody had the word Sith in their language, but the Kemets.
So I'm like, I don't get it. But the problem that this great top scholar, this gem of the community, he suffers from a false cause fallacy. That it occurs when someone incorrectly assumes that a causal relation exists between two things or events. This is an improper conclusion because either such a relationship does not exist or the evidence in support of it is insufficient, or in this case, non-existent. This is fallacious. And how does he come to this fallacy? Well, in linguistics, false friends are words in different languages that look or sound similar but differ significantly in meaning. Like, I don't know, Sif and Seth. So by creating this false friend dichotomy, he falls into this fallacy, this top scholar, this gem of the community.
Hey, the alliteration on that was dope though, for real.
Ah, man. So let's continue here. So actually,
I
MJ,
got
you
it.
can read it. You got it? All right, great.
Yeah, I got it. The names in Star Wars, and in particular the early drafts, were not chosen for their symbolic meanings, but more for their phonetic connotations. They were meant to sound exotic, alien, innocent, intimidating, whatever suited the character. You had names like Volrum, Montrose, Deke, Jedi Bendu, Ashla, Bogan, Vader, and Wookiee. they don't inherently carry any meaning other than being names that Lucas liked for their unusual and appropriate sounds. The Secret
Then
History of Star Wars.
right.
Yeah.
Didn't he just say that Lucas understood like Kemetic religion and that's where he was drawing orders from? Is that what this is saying? He chose the words because they were Kemet? No. They were not chosen for their symbolic meaning, but more for their phonetic connotations. They didn't inherently carry any meaning other than being names that Lucas liked for their unusual and appropriate sounds. They sounded fly, that's why he used them.
Wookie.
Put it in layman's terms. Man, that word sounds cool. Let's go with that.
That's exactly what happened. Right? The annotated screenplay literally says, quote, the names in Star Wars were simply created phonetically. The, the screenplay literally says the names in Star Wars were simply created phonetically. Lucas elaborates, quote, this is him speaking. As I was writing, I would say the names to myself, and if I had a hard time dealing with the name phonetically, I would change it. It had to do with hearing the name a lot or whether I got used to it or not. Not because I was looking at the Shabaka stone and the Pep M Heru, and I like this word, and I'm gonna bounce it and flip. He didn't do none of that. If it sounded cool, then I would use it. If not, right? Uh, MJ, can you read this for us?
Yes, sir. The names of the characters in the final draft of Star Wars had eventually been settled on for associative reasons. However, perhaps even chosen at the unconscious level, as the names draw strong connections to the characters' own defining traits, which is perhaps why many are inclined to believe the Dark Father theory. Han Solo, a loner who learns the value of friendships. Leia Organa, connoting an organic, uh, a benign association for the leader of the good guys in opposition to the cold and artificial world of the Empire. Luke Skywalker, with his head in the clouds, dreaming of greater things than his uh, drab life on the farm. Daydreamer, in other words. Obi-Wan connotes Holy One. Darth Vader connotes Dark Invader.
So again,
This
it has nothing to do with Kemet. They made up some cool names, and then as they continued doing these drafts of the screenplay, the names started to settle in more because they were inspired by the actual characters that they've invented. Had nothing to do with Kemet. He said Skywalker. Well, he walked in the sky. He walked, and then, no, he's a daydreamer, head in the clouds. That's what they meant. It had nothing to do with Kemet.
just denies the humanity of other ethnic groups, the ability to be creative. This is really a whole nother level of black supremacy, basically, in my opinion.
Wow, yeah, it's crazy. Chris, anything to add?
It's sad when your top scholar comes off as a parody in a Wayne's Brothers movie. Like seriously, it's I struggle. Like I lament for my people because I'm like, how in the world does this dude ever come across as intelligent? Like it don't even it on the surface it don't even look quality or it doesn't even look like it makes sense or coherent. And yet there's people who look to this guy and says that guy is scholarly. My people, man, we need to pray, folks. We need to
Right.
pray.
One more clip, and then we out of here. Chris, you got it.
I don't know the address. No,
I
I see the
think.
last one I saw was the last address we have in the thing is the last one we did. What's the
Oh,
timestamp for this one?
okay. Let me. All right, hold up.
Yeah,
I'll give it
and
to
I'll
you now.
and I'll jump to it. Yeah.
It's go to the 32-minute mark.
Oh, we already here. 32 minutes through what?
I'll let you know.
Okay.
Just play it for the 32-minute mark. It's short.
All right, let's go. Let's share screen.
In more modern times, you have Agent Smith. Agent Smith is a representation of the darkness. Neo from the Matrix.
No, no, go back a little. Yeah, the 32-minute mark.
The final,
Just go by the transcript.
you'll see Luke Skywalker. He evaporates. He dies into the sunlight. So he basically becomes the sun. And the very final few seconds of that movie, they ask Rey, what is her last name? Rey decides to adopt the name Skywalker. So it becomes a full circle in the movie. So the whole concept of um, the Force, all these informations comes from Kemet. Shabaka is actually one of our ancestors. He's one of the pharaohs of Kemet. His name is Shabaka. We have the Shabaka stone. We understand that he's using these names and he's telling the story based on our ancestral mythology.
All right, you
So
can stop it there.
Skywalker, full.
Like what some of the Christ said. This is how you do real reviews wrong. This is bizarre. This is the 686 version of real reviews, bro. This is the variant. This is the variant. Oh man. So the top scholar, this gem is telling us that Chewbacca was a Egyptian pharaoh, and he's one of our ancestors. Chewbacca. Okay. Let's see if that's true. All right. So this is from Phil Solstack, Lucasfilm Creative Arts Manager. Right. He's quoting George Lucas. Says Chewbacca. Talking about Chewbacca. I came up with a whole bunch of Wookiee words, just changing words around, and I like Chewbacca the best. That's it. The word Wookiee comes from THX 1138. That's a film that George Lucas created when he was in school. That's where now we see the word THX for like sound quality. Well, that actually derives from a college film that he made called THX 1138. When actor Terry McGovern was doing wild track voiceovers and said, quote, I think I just ran over a Wookiee. They were just making words up. And George was like, it's exactly what Chris said earlier. He heard that Wookiee. I like that. Let's run with that over here in Star Wars. In fact, let's make Wookiee a race of people and let's get these different names for these Wookiees. And like, okay, I need a name for this particular Wookiee. Chewbacca. Yeah, I like that. Let's do that. That's exactly what happened. And this is from the creative arts manager of Lucasfilm. I'm saying this has nothing to do with Ancient Kemet. Nothing. There's a bunch of nerds trying to make up the coolest names possible for the names of the characters that they invented. Now, not to say that they didn't borrow from other things, right? We know that the whole the story arc of the hero, which is used throughout many films, is also used here. We know that he drew heavily on Dune, right? We see that a lot in Star Wars. Uh, he used different words from German and Japan, but changed it and flipped it to make it sound more cool in his perception. But it had nothing to do with let me let me backdoor the sacred information from Kemet into my screenplay. That was not he wasn't thinking about that at all. We're quoting the guy who made the films, right? We're hearing him tell us how he got the names. Tahuti needs to listen to George Lucas. So, gentlemen,
Well, it's
MJ.
just what I it's just what I said earlier about one's justification for the things which they claim to know. I mean, he's not putting forth any knowledge because you got George Lucas saying that, hey, no, this is what I did. So I mean, you can claim that George Lucas is lying, but then we can ask rightly again, okay, what makes you think he's lying? What's your evidence for that? And then, of course, if it comes down to your subjective opinion, then it's that's a part of your psychology. It's nothing that we can do with. All we can do is what Chris said that we need to do, and let's pray for you.
But again,
He
right? Yeah, Chris. Yeah.
he picked the wrong George, man. He should pick George R. Martin. He definitely used some comedics in his history in Game of
Mm.
Thrones for sure.
But again, right? It's and this is for everybody in the chat. When someone makes a claim, well, it comes from here. Well, let's go to that time and period that they're talking about, and let's see if they're saying it over there, right? He's making all these correlations with Star Wars and Kemet that this is what George Lucas is doing. All you gotta do is go look and see what George Lucas said in his own words, how he came across these words. It's really that simple. It's really that simple.
And the fact that it's that simple, and yet you still go out there in front of all those people and do that presentation is telling of how much you care about truth. It just is. Because you a Google search away from let me find a new theory.
But again, it's no different than the whole, television telling lies to my vision, library, the web. You gotta be careful when you're in the internet because the World Wide Web. You see, that's why they call it a web because they're trying to capture you in their web. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Like that spider Charlotte, right?
I like what Armchair It says George Lucas modeled Star Wars on Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Hero sounds like Heru, therefore Star Wars is comedic. That's exactly how they reason, though. That's perfect. That's a perfect example. And yes, he does model it as most sci-fi and Marvel movies do and comics do. They model themselves from the hero's journey, right? So, but that's perfect. That's exactly what they do. That's exactly it. So, but yeah, that's what I wanted to share. You know, Jabari's top student, a gem. He is a gem to the community. Just giving you his opinion, backed by nothing. Backed by nothing. So, gentlemen, final thoughts before we sign off.
We got to pray for our people. Um, that God will expose the deceivers. Um, I'm all for a good performance, but I mean, I think somebody put in the chat earlier that Sinetta was scraping the bottom of the barrel. Uh,
Yeah, that
the
was
bo-
more said that.
that's the truth. There's nothing else there. It's destroyed. It's over. I hope everybody got paid while they could, but but it's over. The jig is up. It's dead.
Yep,
And
pretty
we'll
much.
we'll keep putting down zombies, but it's dead. I mean, the all you're gonna see is a bunch of gimmicks at this point.
Right, and as long as you keep coming to Christianity, we're gonna defend it, and we're gonna expose the fallacies of your argumentation. You know, so and again, right, by him being wrong, does that make Christianity true? No,
Yeah.
it does not. It does not. But you know what it does? It takes this type of argumentation off the table. So if you want to critique Christianity, by all means, but don't use this form of argumentation because clearly it's fallacious in nature. So if you're going to come across Christianity and the biblical worldview, you need to come with a more robust argument than Well, George Lucas studied ancient Kemetic philosophy. Like, he did not. Sith means Seth. No, sir. No. That is not a robust argument against Christianity. So, apologies, Detroit. Final thoughts.
Man, just pray for our people, man. This is to me, it's almost comical, but in reality, you tune in to Signet, that video got 10,000 views already. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of people tuning in and buying into the stuff that people like him are what they're saying. So as much as I want to laugh and joke about it, the reality is we need to pray and we need to do apologetics like we're doing here today. And we need our people to wake up. We need them to use their brain and to see when it's obvious that a person is making correlations that can't possibly be the case, that I probably shouldn't listen to this person.
Yep. And we're going to keep it short and sweet. And there we have it from MJ, Apologies in Detroit, and BK. Peace.